And this is my friend's 2003 Terminator Cobra. And what's special about this car is this was one of the test cars for Kenny Bell back in early 2003, maybe even late 2002, when they were developing the Kenny Bell superchargers. So this car is really neat, and my friend had paid a lot of money for this car, and it was known around town. It only comes out once in a while, and over the last decade it's probably only been out a couple times. And this is one of the cruises we went on when it came out, and it was really fun to see the car again. The story about this car really starts back in 2004 when I graduated high school and I went to go serve a mission in South America for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's a 2-year commitment. I was gone. I didn't go buy a Mustang right away. I did have friends who stayed around town and who did not go on missions, and they would pursue different hobbies and different interests. And one of those friends of mine had a Honda Civic, and that Honda Civic was all riced out, and we made some funny videos with it up at the airport. And it was like Pimp My Ride, like one of those kind of TV show videos where we'd rice it out, and it was a lot of fun. And he'd joke around, and I was domestic, and my brother were like domestic cars, muscle cars, and he was into the import cars, and we were still friends, and we got along great. And anyway, he didn't go anywhere after high school. He went directly to the Mitsubishi dealership and bought a brand new Lancer Evolution. And so he was pretty quick around town. He was known as being one of the newer, faster, nicer cars, and there was hardly anyone around here that age who was buying a nice new car like that and building it up and racing it. So I got back from my mission and I was at my house, and my little sister brought her boyfriend over, and he was driving an 80s Fox Body, which was a really nice Fox Body car, like an 88 GT. And he was talking to me about cars. He saw that I had my 97 V6 Mustang, and I was just starting out, and my wife and I had the Lexus and the Mustang, and we got talking cars, and he told me that he had a black Terminator Cobra. And so he showed me a YouTube video, and it was of this black Cobra doing a dyno pull. And he told me that it had a Kenny Bell supercharger. So he knew a lot about it. But the truth was, it wasn't his car. It was his father's car. And so that was kind of lame that he claimed it was his car to get some credit with me, with my little sister. But as time would go on, I ended up meeting his father, and we got along great. We were car people. He liked to try to get car meets together and stuff, so that was kind of fun, although the Terminator didn't come out very much. So we got to talking about the cars, and he told me that he always wanted a Terminator Cobra, and he looked through a lot of listings, and he shopped around, and he found somebody who was selling this Cobra in California, and they said that the owner of this car lived a couple miles away from the Kenny Bell factory, the research and development, the dyno, everything, and that they used this car as the main test car for the Kenny Bell supercharger. So that's very iconic for anybody who knows about these cars, because the Kenny Bell is one of the favorite sounding superchargers, and at the time it was one of the best superchargers you could buy for this Cobra. And so he paid a lot of money for this car. Back in 2007 or so, the GT500s were coming out, and so the Terminator Cobras were going down in price, even though that would be short-lived and people would see the real value of the factory forged engines in these Terminators and their capabilities and the limits of the GT500s as well, and people would start going back to the Terminators. But at the time, people were selling these to buy a new GT500 and try to be the newest and biggest and baddest around. So my friend still paid a lot of money. He paid more than what a GT500 cost to buy this car at the time, and that was a lot of money. And we got to talking, and he said that one night he was at a car meet with his son, and they were driving this Cobra around, and they met up in the parking lot with everybody. They had their hoods open, and a kid with a blue Lancer Evolution was there, and his license plate said Evo Boy on the back, and that was the kid I knew, my friend. And so He was known for having a very fast car, and he wanted to race this Terminator Cobra. So they went out and lined him up, and I don't know if the Terminator even had drag radials on it. It had those big ugly wheels on it. But regardless, this was over 600 horsepower, and not only that, but this Terminator had nitrous installed on it. So this car was ready to rock. So they lined up the cars. There was a crowd there. Somebody flagged them, and boom, the race was on. The Evo instantly got a couple car lengths on the Cobra with the all-wheel drive, and it was moving. And the guy was driving the Cobra, and his son said, "Dad, come on, step on it, we're losing." And his dad looked at him and said, "Hold on a second." He got the car going through first and second, maybe even third, and then he really laid into it and sprayed the nitrous. And they caught and passed that Evo like he was standing still and gapped him like crazy. So that was a really cool story. It was known around town. Everybody knew that there was a big, bad black Cobra in town, and that it lived up on top of the hill in the nice houses, and that it was one of the meanest cars in town. And I've come across a few people who told me they knew about the car and that they had always heard the stories about the car here in town, so that was pretty cool. Well, one day the owner was out driving the car around and he was being a little bit hard on it, and he melted a piston or two. So he took the car to a couple places and asked opinions, and people told him that maybe the octane around town wasn't what they said it was. Others say that he was just running way too much boost for 91 octane, especially with nitrous. You know, the car was tuned on the dyno, but maybe it was a Torco tune and he didn't know about it. So there was a lot of speculation of what really happened, but needless to say, the engine was toast and it was time for a rebuild. So he had the engine being rebuilt at a really good place in town. And during that time, he went to a block party, and one of his neighbors, who didn't like the car and didn't like loud noises, came up to him and said, "So, where is your Mustang? I heard you ruined the engine in it, and it's not making noise around this neighborhood anymore." And he looked him right back in the eyes and said, "You know where the car is? It's at the shop. You know where the engine is? It's out of it. You know why? Because it's being rebuilt as we speak, and it will be making noise again very soon." So not too long later, the car was back on the road, everything was back the way it was, and the car was mean and nasty again. But the car really didn't come out much more after that. And I don't know if that's a combination of the owner not wanting to hurt the engine again, or him being very busy, because he's a very successful guy here in town, he's well known, and he has a lot of cars, including that Lingenfelter Corvette that's right next to it. And so it turns out that the Fox body that I had mentioned, where the son had brought it over to my house when he was dating my sister, that Fox body belonged to him as well, and he had a pretty good car collection. And on top of that, his sons really got into trucks. They really liked these big, lifted F-250s that were total show cars. As a matter of fact, he was convinced by his sons to go and buy two trucks that were in SEMA, and they were really nice show trucks, and they were just absolutely crazy, powder coated and painted, chrome all underneath them, very beautiful trucks. And so these trucks started taking over, and the Cobra was just kind of pushed aside. And over the years, the only times I ever saw the Cobra were very, very few, and when I did, I would peek in the garage when I go up to his house, and there were about 3 comforters and blankets just laid all over the top of it, just covering it up and keeping it, and it sat like that for a long time. So several years later, we decided to go on a nice car cruise out to Zion National Park nearby. Very beautiful place to go. And he pulled out the Cobra, and he pulled out the trucks, and he pulled out the Corvette, and he pulled out everything, and he had a lot of the people who work for him each got to take one of the cars or trucks, and we all headed out and drove to Zion. And so it was a really fun cruise. It's one of the few times I've seen the car actually out in daylight. And when we were getting on the on-ramp to the freeway, I was behind him, and he got squirrely all over the place real easy. So it was just really fun to see the car being enjoyed. And I really haven't seen it drive around since. I think it's back in the garage, and that's where it's going to stay. And so we'll look at some details of the car here. As you can see, it's a black '03 Cobra. He did tell me that he got the car home and realized later that somebody had closed the garage door on the roof or something before he bought it. That was unfortunate. So it's hard to tell, but there was a little bit of a crease on the roof. Black cars are known for swirl marks, so it does have some swirls. It could use a paint correction. I believe the car has about 20,000 miles on it. It still has the running pony in the grille, and yes, Cobra Mustangs came with the running pony. All Mustangs do. So many people have traded it out for the Snake that you would think it's factory, but that is the factory running pony in the grille. Although everyone I talked to is not a fan of these wheels, I'm sure they were expensive, and they were the wheels that were on the car when he bought it, so he's just kept it that way. The rest of the car looks pretty stock. It doesn't even have the letters in the back bumper in vinyl or anything. So you can see it has a nice catback, probably a Magnaflow or Bassani, I would imagine. Inside the car you can see it has a triple gauge pod on the pillar, as well as more gauges on the bezel. And he said that he got an exhaust temperature gauge because the people who had talked to him about the engine melting told him to keep an eye on exhaust temperatures, and if it gets over a certain temperature then he knows that he's running lean. A wideband would probably do that just as fine, but anyway, I know he was very proud of that gauge. And moreover, you can see an aftermarket stereo system, more gauges, and the 6-speed, of course. And looking down here, the old style tune change there where the coin holder was, a couple more buttons there, and a little green light and a nitrous activation switch, I believe is what all that is. Then you have the original Terminator front seats, a rear seat delete, and a roll bar with, it looks like some kind of a camera mount on it there. And then going under the hood, of course, you've got wrinkled black valve covers, wrinkled black expansion tank, and intercooler tank there, batteries in the trunk, and the Kenne Bell supercharger with hoses all over it. Not sure if that's just cooling or meth injection, and fuel rails, everything on there. So pretty cool setup under the hood, very show, very cool. And so this is a pretty cool setup here. This is a Kenne Bell Black Terminator Cobra, one of the iconic mean Cobras of the day. So really fun to see. Neat story about the car, lots of fun stories to laugh about and enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I sure did. It's a good one to talk about with all my friends. It's nice that it's a local Cobra. There were only probably 2 or 3 Cobras in this town before my brother and I got ours, and then other people started getting them again. And so as far as I can remember, there was a torch red with chrome wheels Terminator, the first one I ever saw here in town. There was one of those. There was a Red Fire convertible, which I've done a story about. Unfortunately, that car was hacked up and parted out because it was found in a storage unit and the person didn't pay for it. So then the worker at the storage unit was given the car and he got scared, so he sawzall hacked up the car, sold the pieces, and got rid of it. There was an Oxford White Terminator, and it was owned by an older guy who had a license plate frame that had the Hot Wheels logo on it, and that car was sold when he got sick and sent to North Carolina, I believe, all the way across the country. And I did talk to him once at Walmart looking at Hot Wheels, and he had told me that he used to have a white '03 Cobra, and I asked him about the license plate frame and he said it was him. And then there was this black Terminator. So I believe those were all of the ones around here for a long time, and so kind of a cool piece of history, kind of a rare car around here especially. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more Mustang content.